December 4th meeting of the Hadley Select Board. With me this evening, we have David Phil, Amy Parsons, myself, Molly Keegan, Randy Iser. Jane Devon Smith will be joining us within the next 15 minutes or so. In accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 22 of the Acts of 2022, signed by the Governor on February 15th in the same year, I announce that this meeting of the Select Board is being recorded by Hadley Media, the Select Board's office via Zoom, and ask if there is anyone present who is also recording the meeting. If no one's recording, Jennifer, please let the minutes reflect that no one else has indicated that they are recording this meeting. Okay, so first order of business this evening, we have a 6 o'clock appointment, and this is our annual FY25 classification hearing. So, and we have, okay, a couple of the assessors are present as well. All right.
Good evening.
Good evening. So we have Dan Zadanek here, our assistant assessor, and we have Jeff Nish and Bill Bannock, our elected officials. Welcome. Ready?
Yes, here. What was a year ago?
A year ago.
For this particular item.
For this item, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we've all gone through this a couple times each, so I'll try to do the abridged version. This year, a few numbers. Our tax levy limit this year is 15,322,000. The actual levy will be 15,318,323 because of rounding. We can't go over. We can't go up another penny because we would exceed the levy limit. Our residential value last year was 873,961,700. This year it's 906,287,600. It's up 3.7%. Last year, our commercial, industrial, and personal property value was 393,863,865. This year it's $411,179,077. It's up 4.39%. That's due mostly to two large commercial projects that came in. Are the vast majority of that, and our personal property went up probably about 15%. The average house value in town last year was 439,600. This year it's just under 454,000. The average bill last year was $5,007. This year it's $5,279. So it's a higher jump than normal. But there's two factors that contributed to that. The school locker rooms are on there now. That's adding about $90 to the average tax bill. And the Chinese charter school purchased 300 Venture Way, which was a large industrial office building to house their new school. And that's going to increase the average bill by about $19 because that became exempt as of July 1st. And then the remaining is the normal about $160 increase that we have every year. Our tax rate last year was $11.39. This year, if you adopt a single rate, it'll be $11.63. Just the normal note that splitting the rate doesn't increase the amount of taxes that we take in. It's still governed by the levy limit. The assessors are recommendations this year, as in the past, they're recommending no open space discount, no residential exemption, and no small commercial exemption. And the board is also recommending a single tax rate for 2025. Each year you've got to vote to basically choose the four options that I just described: the selection of a residential factor, if you're going to grant an open space discount, grant a residential exemption, or a small commercial exemption. And I'll go into that a little bit more in detail in a few slides. The split rate originated when 2.5 was adopted in 1980 or was approved. What was happening at that point, which spurred the passing of 2.5, was that residential values were assessed at, our properties were assessed at a fraction of what they were actually worth, while commercial were assessed at the full value. So you had houses, you could have a house and a commercial business next to each other in downtown Boston, and one would pay $300 a year and the other one was paying $13,000 a year because the rates were the values were messed up. I mean, if you go back into the 70s, tax rates were in the $100 and $200 rate per thousand. But houses were
Right.
houses in the 70s here were assessed, I think it was in the $5,000 to $6,000 range. And they were selling for $35, $40 at that point. When 2.5 was enacted, it would cause residential taxes to spike. So politicians worried about getting reelected, so they petitioned the legislature to allow communities to have the option of charging commercial more, which it went through at 150 initially. It went as high as I think 225, 225%, and it's since been scaled back down. We can't go higher than 150, but communities that have done it in the past can keep the level that they were at in prior years. The next slide is basically a breakdown of our levy limit for this year. It's last year's levy of 13.4 million. The 2.5% increase for this year is 335,000. We've got new growth of 290,000, which is a good chunk from what we normally have. Normally, lately, we've been 130 to 150. That gives us a levy subtotal of 14,041,000. We've got debt exclusions of 1,120,000. And that's up from 860 from last year because of the school locker. And those payments, I believe, have been accelerated to pay this off, pay the lockers off before the fire truck gets added in to make it smooth and flat. And then we've got the water sewer, or it's water sewer, but it's all water. It's for the water treatment plant. It's almost 164,000. That's the money that it comes off in 27, and that you can vote to shift that to pay for the new tanks, the water storage tanks, so that it won't really have a huge impact on anyone's taxes. Our levy ceiling, which is if we had a $25 tax rate, it's the highest we can actually go, is 32,936,000. So we're less than half of what we could have. This slide is all the values in town. I know that it's the totals. Basically, to just point out, we're at 12.6 or 1,266,000,000 in real estate, and an additional 50,779,000 in personal property, for a total of $1.317 billion in value. There's also an additional 225 million in untaxed exempt property, real estate. The majority of that is UMass or town property. The residential factor, the minimum that we can go, the minimum residential factor, this year it's 77.3152%. That's the lowest share that the residential class can pay of the total tax levy. So if you go to 77.31, commercial would be at 150%. So residential taxes would be down about 22.7%, and commercial would go up by 50. Yeah, basically that's what's on this slide. The next slide is the residential and open space percentage versus commercial, industrial, and personal property percentages. And you can see this is the first year in a while where the residential percentage has dropped. In 21, prior to the impact of COVID on the values, we were at 66.4%. That increased because of COVID to 69.32. And it's been dropping slightly. We're at 68.79. I'm sure if we get some more commercial development in town, it'll pick up. I mean, the residential percentage, new houses now are all in the $1 million range, basically in town that are getting built. So it's tough. You get a $12 million commercial building and 12 new houses and it's a wash. It's not going to really change much. This chart gives local area communities and Hadley how much their tax bills were last year. There's 7 communities that have a single rate for all classes of property and 5 that have a split rate. And what I did was I recalculated what the split rate communities would be if they had a single tax rate. So for example, Westfield, the residential rate for last year was $15.97 and the commercial was $31.39. If they had a single rate, the rate would have been $18.68 overall. So what that does is you look at their bill would have been $6,305 for the average house in Westfield. And on the bottom, I've got the 5 communities that split their rate. The average bill last year was $5,616 before they split the rate, which is about $600 more than what Hadley's bill is. And after the rate split, it's $4,533 or $474 less. Most of the single rate communities, the bills are at our level or higher. Next slide is the last 3 years. It gives what the average residential value was, what the tax bill was, and what the increase was from the prior year. So last year bills went up 3.62% for residential. This year they're going up 5.43%, but the majority of that, or the bulk of that, is the locker overrides and the charter school. Commercial last year, the bill, or 2 years ago, it was $93.79. Last year went to $96.51. This year it's $10,366. 2.9% last year, 7.41% this year. But that number is a little deceiving because if you take out the 2 new buildings, it's probably going to drop almost back to where it was for last year, for the 847. So if you had a commercial building last year or property last year, your taxes are going to be up just the amount that the tax rate is going. We didn't go up on commercial properties this year. So the average value, the mean value went up because we added in 2 buildings that are significantly higher than what the average is. The next slide is split rate options. And rather than go through all 50 options of that 1% intervals, this is basically the 100% is a split rate, or sorry, a single rate of 1163 for both. And I'm sorry, I forgot to put the headers on here. The third column is residential. The last column is commercial, industrial, and personal. So if you did a 20% shift, the residential would drop from 1163 to 1057, and commercial would go from 1163 to 1396. If you did the full shift, the rate would drop to 899, and the commercial rate would jump to 1745. So it's a rather large increase. There's additional options that you have. If you split the rate, you can put chapter land parcels in the open space class. That prevents shifts to farmers that have land in chapter. But most, and I've got an example on the next slide. It would be negligible to most farmers if you split it that are in chapter. If they're not in chapter, it would be a big hit. But if you look at this slide, it shows that the tax bill, if you did a 10% shift, it would go from 6396 to 6105. But somebody that wouldn't qualify because the parcel is too small, they would go up by $166 or 10%. Other options that you have, open space, you can provide up to a 25% discount. So if you did split it and classified the chapter land is open space, you could give an additional 25% discount on the chapter. But as of right now, we don't have any land that's technically classified as open space. Probably about 15 years ago, the DOR came in, and when we did our reval, they said, yeah, you should really think about reclassifying any open space land as other classes, either residential, undevelopable, commercial. It's like Lake Warner, I think was the last parcel we had as open space, the land that's under Lake Warner, and they said that just listed as residential unbuildable. The residential exemption, this is where you can grant up to a 35% of the average assessed value, residential value, for any owner occupied house in town. So basically, you would take off about $145,000 off of each house. These are typically adopted in Cape communities or communities that have high-end residences that aren't owner occupied. So if you take, like, for example, Hyannis and the Kennedy compound, they could adopt this and take 35% of the average value off. If they're not living there, they would end up paying more. And the homes that are owned by the people who live there year round, the more meager homes or medium priced homes would see a big discount. I think Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard have this.
I'm sorry for a second. I think the presentation needs to catch up with it.
I'm sorry, I was trying to find which one. I didn't want to go.
No, keep going.
Keep going, yeah.
This one?
That one, yep.
Okay, sorry.
Actually, you can go one more.
One more, okay.
Yeah. So if the residential exemption were granted or adopted, any house assessed at 566,000 or more would pay more in taxes this year than they would have if it wasn't granted. And we're estimating that the vast majority of homes in town are owner occupied. We really don't have a true way to determine until people would come in and say, oh, we're owner occupied, to determine what is actually owner occupied. I mean, we can run a report that has where the tax bill is mailed versus the property location. And that gives us somewhat of an idea, but a lot of people have bills mailed to their work or a PO box or a family member's home just so that it gets handled properly. Small commercial exemption. This is something that you could adopt. It's 10% of the property value would come off. But there's two things to qualify for this. Property has to be assessed for less than $1 million. And they have to have less than 10 annualized employees. So anybody if there's a strip mall and there's 5 stores there or 5 businesses there and 4 of them have 9 employees and 1 has 12, the property doesn't qualify. This year we actually saw a large increase. Last year we had 55 parcels that would qualify. This year there's 75 parcels. So it looks like there's been a reduction in workforce more than the values changing. It's the reduction because Department of Employment, I think it's employment training.
DUA.
Yeah, they send us a list every year that has all the businesses in town or anybody that's a business that has 10 or fewer employees. Just going over what the pros of a split rate are, it would be lower residential taxes, and it would actually increase the value for residential. The cons of a split rate, we'd see increased commercial, industrial, and personal taxes. The increase in the taxes would result in increased abatement applications, which ends up resulting in increased legal costs, which it ends up costing more in the long run. And the split rate must be voted every year. So if there's a change, if you guys voted a split rate at 3-2, and then one person changed in office next year, they could vote to put it back to a single rate. This is a slide that I've had on here every year. They're kind of old studies, but it shows that residential uses about between 11 and 16% more for every dollar that they pay in taxes and services. And that commercial uses between 20, the more recent one is 29 cents on the dollar. So a commercial business will pay $1 in taxes and get 29 cents in services back. Farming and open space, it's kind of deceiving where it says it's 35 cents in services, but you would think it doesn't use a lot in services, which it doesn't, but because it's open, that includes chapter land, which they might be paying $50 or $60 a year in taxes. This slide just details some local communities from Massachusetts that use that. The most recent ones, I believe, were Deerfield in 2009. Deerfield, Sterling, and Dartmouth were Massachusetts communities that they used for their study. And then assessors' recommendations, they're recommending adopting a single rate for 2025, no open space discount, no residential exemption, and no small commercial exemption. And basically the last slide is if you adopt a single rate, our unused levy capacity will be $3,854. And that's the amount we can't raise due to rounding.
Dan, could you remind us, the tax senior work-off program is available?
The work-off program, that'll start in January, and that would be here through the senior center.
Mhm.
And I believe we have 5 senior and 5 veteran slots available each year.
Mhm.
I want to say from last year, we only had 3 applicants.
Mhm.
This year, I think there's 4 or 5 senior. I think it's up to $1,000 that they can earn. At the maximum rate is minimum wage, unfortunately. And I think that's starting in January, and they could work anytime between January and October. And that would be for the tax bills that go out in December of next year.
Okay.
And we also have Clause 17D, which is a senior exemption. If you have less than, I think it's 40,000 in assets, you can get $175 off your taxes. And we also adopted last year Clause 41C, which has increased income limits and asset limits where you could get $500 off. And that they can either contact Nikki here or our office, and we'll be happy to give people an application and information on that.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Dan or the assessors?
Yeah, can you explain where it said any override funded by a split rate can be put back on the resident? What does that really mean?
There was a I don't want to call it theory, but a thought process probably about 10 or 15 years ago that we could fund an override by throwing it all on commercial. That you could do a $1 million general override and then increase commercial taxes enough so that they get hit exclusively with that money by lowering the residential. And the thought behind that was if you do that, the next year you could get pro-commercial people on the board that would flip it back, and then the residential is paying as much as they would have.
All right. So basically, if the split rate would go away, it would go back
You
to
could,
what it was.
yeah, we had the split rate a few years ago, but that was because commercial values plummeted, right? But they ended up paying slightly less than they would have if we had to split the rate and reduce values.
Okay.
And then we reversed it back when the values came back up, so they ended up paying about the same amount.
So before we vote, I just want to acknowledge that this is Dan's last rate classification hearing.
I'm well aware of that.
Oh, and again, I know you're not leaving tomorrow. You'll be with us a little while longer, but
A few more weeks.
few more weeks. So just want to say very much appreciate the clarity that you bring to this. First couple of years, maybe a little bit tough getting your head wrapped around it, but you've always been great about being able to explain, quickly answer the questions. We know we're losing tremendous institutional knowledge. So I just want to, again, thank you for all of the work that you've done leading us up to this point.
And people can still come in. They'll come in January when they get their bills and yell at me.
So if you heard that, get your abatement requests in, so. Okay, so with that said, is there a motion?
So moved.
To
To accept the recommendations of the assessors as presented.
Okay,
Second.
okay, motion made by Amy, seconded by Randy. All of those in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
And then now we have,
Yep. We have our new principal assessor that's starting in January. Cheryl Galway. Right now you're in Holyoke. Yep, she's in Holyoke right now and she'll be starting on January 6th. For Hadley.
that's great. So Cheryl,
Sure, yeah,
welcome to Hadley.
thank you.
Yeah, we look forward to working with you. As you can see, tough shoes to follow.
Tough guys to work with.
Oh, yeah.
All
She's got that sense.
right. All right.
They will
thank-
sing happy birthday to you.
No. All right. Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Okay, we had another appointment for presentation of the service delivery plan, but looks like there were just a couple of departments that needed to report back to our intern to complete that. So we're going to give her a little bit more time. Hopefully she gets that information and we will have it on a subsequent agenda. And for the audience, just know that Jane Nevin Smith has now entered the building and joined our meeting. Okay, consent agenda. On the consent agenda this evening, we have minutes from November 20th, 2019, October 23rd, 2024, November 6th, 2024, and November 14th, 2024. And we have a resignation from our DEI committee by Sarah Strong.
Motion to approve consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, motion made by David, seconded by Amy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. And we do allow time for public comment. So can I ask, is anybody here this evening, either in the room or participating remotely, that would like to participate in public comment? Okay. If not, then old business 5.1, I'll turn it over to our acting town administrator.
Yes, so you have one item for old business. It's the communication plan policy that we discussed briefly at the last select board meeting. Everyone has had time to review it. I've gotten comments from multiple select board members as well as a few department heads who took a look at their portions, made some minor adjustments to it. And again, I just want to remind folks that, this policy, this plan is it's different from, what would be considered rules and regulations. That's not what this is intended for. What it's intended for is really to give guidance to future town administrators, future select board members on how communications, both internally and externally, would be the most effective being used. So I would ask that the board accept this policy as part of their policy manual.
Move to accept.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Jane and seconded by David. All of those in favor?
Aye. And I will commend you again on a good job on this.
Yes, sir.
Yes, this is an excellent document.
Thank you. All right,
6.1, I'll request that you pass over.
okay.
We'll set that up for a subsequent meeting.
All right, 6.2, solar committee. So at the recommendation at a previous meeting, it was recommended that we establish a group of individuals to focus on solar initiatives in town. We're seeking 2 members of the community to work on recently approved at special town meeting solar project, a study that's been approved, and the committee will evaluate, assess, and make recommendations to the select board regarding optimum size of the project based on site suitability and conservation commission review, financial viability, ownership versus lease options, identify all federal and state incentives. Or I don't know if we could do all, but as many as you can. And identify and secure grant resources that might be available to be used for the hiring of professional services if needed. So the proposed committee consists of the following makeup: 2 community members, 1 planning board member, 1 to 2 climate change committee members, 1 conservation commission representatives, a select board member, a finance committee member, and an ag commission member. And then ideally, we'd have somebody from the solar industry, a representative, and an electrical engineer.
And just so the board is aware, the top half of that list are, generally speaking, individuals who are normally added to a lot of the committees that the board creates. And then the bottom few are individuals who, after speaking with Michael Doctor about this, and some of the other individuals that, we're discussing this preliminarily, was suggested that they be added to the list as well. So this is something that the board can certainly decide whether you want any or all, or to eliminate any of these for redundancy. It's completely up to you. As the numbers sit, it is an odd number. So if you pick 1 of each, it's 9. If you pick the 1 or 2 community members or 1 or 2 climate change committee members, it goes up to 11. So you're fine either way, whatever you decide.
Well, it's 9 plus the 2 community members, so it's really 11 or 13.
Right. So like I said, whichever one you choose, if you choose just the 1 of each or the 2 of each, it can still give you an odd number.
Mhm.
I don't know how large you want the committee to
I was
be.
gonna say, this looks like a really large committee to me. And I know that like the planning board and the Conservation Commission are going to be involved anyway in terms of talking to the committee. And everybody in Hadley's already busy with a lot of different committees. And I'm wondering if we're making something almost impossible to hold together with the number of people who would have to find a time to meet and give up another evening. And I don't know what to do about that. That's just my statement.
Well, I'm assuming that the solar industry rep and the electrical engineer are non-voting members.
Right.
Oh, anyways, they're just there for advisement. But yeah, I would agree with you, Jane, that the planning board and the conservation committee or commission members, they're gonna be involved anyways. So maybe 2 less people to try to schedule with, but that's all.
You'd also, I would assume that once you decide the makeup of the committee, we would put it out to the town to see who might volunteer, and then we could come back to you with actual names in those slots, and you could decide if you want to keep trying for more, or if you're satisfied with that.
I think that's a reasonable way to go.
Madam
Do you
Chair,
guys have any thoughts on the
you might.
size of the committee?
The land use coordinator. Is going to fill the conservation and what role bringing her numbers.
Some of these people who all the advisory to the committee, be core with people, meeting electrical engineer. There's somebody there that is an advisor. We can grow with just think. Yeah, I don't think we need to have everybody come to meetings. Identify the resources. There are some really good resources that there's somebody that works in solar. There's no electrical engineers that would donate some time.
But if we put all these people on the committee, then the quorum issue comes up.
Yeah, no, it's totally
I
valid.
think, I was gonna say, I think this is, because this is like 9 to 11 people. I was thinking that, we should kind of maybe put out and see what we get for feelers, but then we should also say we want, a minimum of 5, maximum of 7 or something, so that when we do get people in, that we can just pull the trigger and say, okay, we have enough people, go ahead. And then that way you're not like, okay, well, are there still open spots? How do we know if we have a quorum or not? And I mean, I'm good with doing something like that.
Yeah.
Like a minimum of 5 plus the rep and the engineer, something like that. And that way we're not waiting and waiting for, meeting after meeting and it ends up being 2 months down the road. We don't have a full committee either.
That sounds
That
good.
sounds good to me.
So how do we proceed to do that?
If you select the number, say 5, no less than 5, no more than 7, or what Amy just suggested. Jennifer and I can go through this list that's on here unless someone wants to add a specialty or a committee that someone is already on, and we can put it out to those committee members, see who is interested. And like she said, when we hit the number, we're done, and we come back and say, here's our folks.
I also think that what Michael said is that we can say we are going to be looking for volunteers occasionally as consultants from the town to answer questions. And we'd like their names, but they aren't going to be voting members. So they would be an adjunct person.
Okay.
All right, I move that we form a committee that has between either 5 or 7 members on it from the list that we are currently looking at. And let Mike and Jennifer see what they can do with that.
I'll just amend that and say a committee with a minimum of 5, maximum of 7.
Yeah.
That way.
You okay with that?
Yeah.
The amended motion?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Jane and seconded by David. All of those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. And then the next item on the agenda is Springfield MRF contract extension.
You passing
That's-
over licensing renewals?
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
happy to go last.
Yeah, sorry.
And I'm not offended, as long as you approve them.
I was just looking at Kathy, so.
I got it.
Okay, so materials recycling facility for those who are wondering what MRF stands for, because we love our acronyms.
So this is a 5-year extension of the current contract. They were able to renegotiate. We're asking for y'all to sign approval so that Hadley can participate, so that the transfer station, whose name I'm blanking out on all of a sudden, Solid Waste Solutions continue to take our recycling to the MRF.
So the only question I have about this is if the future of the transfer station changes, are we bound to keep participating with the recycling facility contract?
Good question.
I would think we would want to participate.
I'm just saying, like, let's just say 3 years from now, that we decide that we're not gonna have a transfer station anymore, we're gonna go to curbside or something like that along those lines.
I believe that even if we went to curbside, we still have to take our recycling to the MRF. The MRF is sort of the only show in town in this area,
Right.
so everybody's goes to the MRF.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
I think USA has their own.
Okay. I like that.
Okay.
But for communities, everybody goes to the MRF.
For municipal,
Yes, for municipal, I believe.
Personally, don't know, I guess it depends on the quality of contract with, I don't know.
I believe with the municipalities, it's almost, I mean, I could look at the list again, but I believe it is. I think if you have to go elsewhere, I think you have to go to Leominster, Leominster, I think, or something like that for other, I think they really are kind of it in the area, other than I guess USA.
Something good sport, they do a really good job there.
No, and I'm not arguing that, I think the transfer station contract is up relatively soon. And so,
they're not in alignment.
right, and I just don't wanna bind us to something that may cost us down the line if we decide as a town to go another
I
direction.
guess it was, or no, Arlene Miller is go-to queen of recycling and knows everything about all of this, so.
So when we went out to bid 3 years ago, they weren't exactly beating down our door for the applications to run our transfer station. Solid Waste was it. And they were already the company that was running it. I don't think there's a lot of interest in running them anymore. So I don't know, I would be very surprised if another company jumped in and wanted to.
Well, if, let's say that were to play out, then the town would have no more recycling. So we would give them everything we had, which is nothing.
Yep.
So.
It's another way.
Okay. So we need a motion to
Please.
approve.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Randy and seconded by Amy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. And then now if we can go back to the one I skipped over. So again, this is an annual license renewal process that's handled by Jennifer, our licensing coordinator. So what we have in front of us is a very nice spreadsheet with a tab that separates the common vic licenses from automatic amusements, from entertainment, from class 1 and 2. Car dealers, and then theater and skating. And Jennifer, I think in the past you needed a vote for each category.
The reason I like to break them up is because we have a select board member who can't vote on one of them.
Right.
So by doing them this way, it allows us to allow that board member to abstain.
Okay. And how are you doing in terms of the renewals? Are we?
I'm very proud of them this year. I'm actually incredibly proud of our businesses. I have 5 businesses that are outstanding right now.
That's a,
It's unheard of.
yeah.
Unfortunately, we've lost a few businesses, but yeah, go Hadley businesses. I'm so proud of y'all.
So I'll make a motion to approve the common vic licensing list.
Second.
Okay, motion made by David, seconded by Amy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to approve the automatic amusement license list.
So moved. Oh, second. Sorry.
Motion made by David, seconded by Amy. All those in favor?
Aye.
And then a motion to approve the entertainment license list.
Second.
Motion made by David, seconded by Amy. All those in favor?
Aye.
To approve class 1 and 2 car dealer licenses.
Second.
Motion made by David, seconded by Amy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions?
Aye for abstention.
A motion to approve the theater and skating license list.
Second.
Motion made by David, seconded by Amy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'm gonna ask if y'all will also do the alcohol. if they're listed there, but for some reason they're not showing up on my spreadsheet. So I'm gonna pull it up on my alternate spreadsheet and ask if you will renew the liquor licenses as well.
Motion to approve the liquor licenses list.
Second.
Motion made by David, seconded by Amy.
Do we have any vacant licenses?
Oh, there's.
We do, we lost me Tierra. Yeah, and realizing that says Hadley Farms, but it should say Homewood Suites. But yes,
Okay, motion to, I'll remake the motion. to
Thank you.
approve the amended alcohol license list.
Second.
Motion made by David and seconded by Amy. All those in favor?
Aye.
thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. I know that's a slog at the end of every year.
They did such a good job. I'm so proud of them.
Okay, and then town administrators report, item 7.1. Michael?
Yes, anything in red on your PA report that's attached there are things that have changed. Everything else is holding in a holding pattern. Obviously, your assessor was selected by your board of assessors, so I'm excited about that we got that in time so that we can get a little bit of training in before Dan is done. Service delivery plan, we're going to try to aim to get that on the 18th agenda if we can get the information from the other departments. Fiber update, I have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow, mid-morning, with all the department heads and with the fire chief to go over where we are at with that project, and we are nearly complete. The finance team will be meeting on Monday to discuss where we're heading for FY 26 when it comes to the ambulance situation. Obviously, everyone knows that we removed 350,000 from the stabilization fund to continue paying for FY 25, and now we have to figure out FY 26. Let's see. Your solar project, obviously, we just dealt with that. We got the committee recommendations, and we will work on getting some individuals for there. The Russell School reuse. I actually made an alteration to this right before I came over here because I got an email from Jake from AHF. They have been in contact with 5 College as well as the engineers, and they agree that they will be working on 4 possible reuses for that. They're much more clear on what they're going to be aiming for. A possible use for 5 colleges, some designs that they have in mind, micro housing, code updates to open the building for passive use. And then they, as much as no one really wants to see this one, they will be working on a demolition possibility as well. Jake has mentioned, Jake told me in the email that their final report will be completed in January or February. So I look forward to hearing back from them with more information. Town hall consultant, that shouldn't be in red. That's actually the same as it was before. Same with the levy. I'm waiting to hear back from Rich Niles. Goodwin space needs study was approved. Moving forward with that, and TA search. We went through the 3 companies that had previously applied, and we did select a company based upon the minimum requirements. Sent the contract to legal yesterday. They will be reviewing and they'll get it back to us. And once we have an agreement, I'll be able to report more on that. But for the time being, it is moving forward, thankfully. Library roof, final report from Gail is being presented at the next library trustees meeting, which is on the 10th of December at 7 p.m. There will be a Zoom link on the website for anybody who wants to watch that. I will be attending that as well, and I'll be able to report back anything that we learned from there. And the last thing I just wanted to let the board know is something that I've been working on that I'm going to be asking some of the other town hall folks to kind of work with me on so they can get a better idea of, workloads, efficiency and things like that, as I am working on kind of a multi-year plan, cost benefit analysis type of plan to try to, to be able to hand something over to the next town administrator, your permanent town administrator, of what we all think town hall should and could look like. And again, I realize that there is a form of government study going on, parallel to this, but the time frame on that is kind of well off into the distance. And I think there are probably some changes that this board can make without making any major adjustments to kind of make things a little bit more efficient. So that's something else that I'm working on as well. That's it.
Anything for Mike? If not, then next order of business are the liaison. Any liaison reports? I just have one. So the Affordable Housing Trust, the trustees, comprised of the 5 planning board members and myself from this board. We did meet last night, kind of embedded in the planning board meeting. And there's an item that's, I'm just giving you a heads up, there's an item that's going to be coming on December 20th, right? That was the email I sent about getting the Affordable Housing Trust.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's on there.
Yes.
Okay,
It's on
thank you, yeah. So at our next meeting, if you recall, the way the Affordable Housing Trust disbursement process works is that first the Affordable Housing Trust would meet and determine if they wanted to recommend a disbursement, but those funds cannot be dispersed without a vote of the select board as well. So it's a joint process. Laura Baker from Valley CDC made a presentation to the trustees last night And there is a vote coming out of that recommending $100,000 be distributed towards the, I'll call it the Econo Lodge project, with stipulations or strings, however you want to put it, that a local preference of 30% of the units be put on that. And there's one more stipulation I'm drawing a blank on. And then all of the inventory be counted for perpetuity as affordable towards our Hadley requirement. So currently those stipulations don't exist. They were discussed way back when we originally were talking about those projects. So at any rate, at our next meeting, that's going to be coming in front of us. So if you want to get more information and hear the back and forth, it wasn't a unanimous vote. I believe it was 5-1. So there was one against, and then you can hear the, kind of pros and cons that were discussed in that meeting. But Laura Baker will be at our meeting to make her presentation again for our benefit.
Thank you.
Anything else? No? Any announcements?
Santa, right? Santa.
Santa.
Santa's on the 15th, I think.
Santa fire truck.
It's on December 15th.
Correct.
Okay. So our annual, and that's Park and Rec, right?
And fire department, yep.
Yep. Santa will be visiting on December 15th, making Santa's rounds. Oh, and there's the route right there. Thank you. So going to start at 8:45 in the morning at the corner of Shattuck and Bayberry. So up in North Hadley, make their way down to the Sugar Shack, and then he's heading over to Meadowbrook and Mount Warner, then on to Sunrise Drive, then Burke Way, West Street at Essalon Cafe around 10:45, onto the Mill Valley Creamery, up to Greenleaves, back down to Flavors, over to Schmore and Laurel, and then ending or making a final stop at Barstow's and ending at the Hadley Elementary School at 12:30-ish. So always a good time. Keep your windows open and listen for Santa. Okay, and then if nobody has anything else, finally this evening, I just want to express condolences on behalf of the Hadley Select Board for the passing of two residents, Greg Lawler and also Marilyn Iwanicki. I'm saying that correctly?
Yes, you are.
Thank you. Marilyn was an animal inspector for the town, so she was a municipal employee and also our longtime DPW worker, Eddie Keeler's sister. So condolences to both families on the passing of their loved ones. Okay. So,
I would like to make a motion that we move into executive session pursuant with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting law may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body for the compensation study. And Section 21A2, contract negotiations with non-union personnel, this being the fire chief. And under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A7, to review for release the following executive session minutes in accordance with Chapter 30A, Sections 22F and G, and we will not be reconvening an open session. The executive session meeting minutes being February 24th, 2022, February 28th, 2021, May 15th, 2019, April 20th, 2022, and June 21st, 2023. And again, we're not reconvening an open session.
Can I just correct something?
No, I'm just kidding.
April 28th, 2021.
What did I say?
I said February for both.
Did I? Sorry, April 28th, 2021, if I did say it wrong, which I think I did. Just kidding.
Second.
okay. Motion has been seconded by Jane. As Chair of the Hadley Select Board, I state that the board has moved and seconded to enter into executive session. And I state that discussing the matters in open session would have a detrimental impact on the bargaining position of the town of Hadley. With that said, thank you, everybody, for coming.
Roll call vote.
Oh,
Phil?
roll call vote.
Roll call vote, Phil?
Yes.
Parsons?
Yes.
Keegan?
Yes.
Isaac?
Yes,
And Nevin Smith?
Yes.
Thank you.
yes.
All right.